Welcome to more World of Warplanes content from the Noble Q. In this video I'm reassessing the Tier 8 premium German heavy fighter, the Blohm and Voss P.203. Hello there. Here we have the BVP-203 on the tarmac outside my hangar. This is one of World of Warplanes' true paper planes. It was a design concept for a heavy or night fighter from 1944, intended to feature a mixed propulsion of radial piston engines and any one of 3 different jet engines. The jet engines of the time suffered from poor performance at low speeds, which it was planned the use of piston engines would overcome. However, the concept never got further than preliminary designs. I have reviewed this plane previously, but now that the year of the P61 has passed, I am reassessing it as it's one of many planes that have returned to viability in the game. The World of Warplanes team has given the plane decent airspeed, good altitude performance and a mixture of weapons groups. Some of that weaponry is long range. Let's look at the numbers. Here we have a spreadsheet featuring all of the Tier 8 heavy fighters. There are 9 of them. If you don't know what's going on with this spreadsheet, there's a link in the description below to a video that explains how this spreadsheet works. Have a look at that and then come back. I'll start by looking at the guns, and there are 3 weapons groups, and this is the only plane in this comparison to feature as many groups. It's a mixture of long range, medium range and short range weapons, with a rating of 41, which is somewhere in the middle, but as you can see lags quite a way behind some of the heavier hitting heavies here, the Westland P.206 and the ME-262 for example. And the DPS at 550 is actually 3rd worst in class. However, I think the guns play better than they might look on paper. Getting into the detail, there are 30mm cannons. The eye-catching thing here immediately is that the range on these weapons is 3,115 feet. These are sniper cannons capable of dealing 280 DPS at a long range. The auto aim angle is 2 degrees, which is pretty tight. You'd be looking for 2.5 or even 3 ideally, but the dispersion angle is getting on for sniper cannon territory at 0.2. Often sniper cannons have 0.1 or 0.15, and the only other heavy to feature a sniper cannon in this comparison is the plane by the side of the BVP-203, the Dornier 335. That's got 130mm, and as you can see here, its dispersion angle is an incredible 0.1. The overheat time on the twin 30mm is 8 seconds, which is generous. The shell velocity is okay at 1,312 feet. That's neither fast nor slow. As you get to about 2,362 feet, these twin 15mm cannons will come to bear, dealing another 170 DPS. And again, the auto aim angle is only 2, but the dispersion angle for this sort of gun at 0.4 is excellent. These are accurate guns. The overheat time is 8 seconds as well, and the shell velocity is identical to that of the 30mm. So the good news there is that if an aircraft is banking away from you, you will probably, provided you're hitting it at all, land both of these weapons groups, and that will be very destructive. Finally, as you get pretty close, 1,640 feet, these 13mm machine guns will start doing damage, another 100 DPS. The auto aim angle is tight for those machine guns, 2 degrees, but you are close, of course. The dispersion angle, again, is an excellent 0.4 degrees. Overheat time, again, 8 seconds. This time the shell velocity is 1,092 feet. However, by the time these start hitting a target, you'll be so close it probably won't matter whether it's banking away from you or not. This is pretty potent armament because it has the ability to deal damage at long range, severe damage at medium range, and can even increase that damage at close range. And that makes these weapons groups quite versatile, in my opinion. Finally, you have some defensive armament. The game model shows 2 guns. It lists it as 1, however. You have 128 DPS and 2,300 feet of range. This will deter bots and some humans, particularly if they make the mistake of flying slowly behind you. There was some suggestion that the BVP-203 would be a fighter bomber, however in this game it has no ordnance, so we can skip over that. Survivability is in the middle for the heavies. The rating is 16 with 600 hit points, 3rd best in class. Damage resistance of 49, why not 50? I don't know, 3rd best in class. And a fire resistance of 65, which is pretty good. Airspeed. Airspeed is on rating at 69, within 3 or 4 ratings points of all of the other heavies. with the exception of the ME262, which is just a wee bit faster. However, there's a sting in the tail here. This cruise speed is fairly low at 342. It's worst in class. You may want to try and improve that. Boost maximum speed, on the other hand, is second best in class at 528 miles an hour. And you have a long boost, 40 seconds. Used to be the longest boost by far on any of the Tier 8 heavies until the advent of the P61, which has had an unbelievable 60 seconds. But the compensation for that is, as probably most of you know, the engines get shot out quite frequently. Dive speed, you're not going to dive away from any of the other heavies. It's as good as most of the other heavies. In fact, it is a little bit better than the Pancake as well. However, you can see that there's a couple of aircraft here, the Dornier 335 and the ME262, with better dive speed. So probably not an escape tactic that I would adopt. Maneuverability, well, what we have on our hands here is a cow. This thing does not turn. We'll drop straight into the worst in class figures. You can see the rating is worst in class at 31. Turn time is worst in class at nearly 15 seconds. Roll rate is worst in class at 60 seconds. The controllability, the speed at which the plane responds to an instruction to change direction, is second worst in class at 77.1. The worst is the Pancake, interestingly. Finally, the maximum optimum speed, where your characteristics begin to degrade. Well, they're already so bad anyway, so perhaps it doesn't matter that they degrade at only 444 miles an hour. Altitude performance is good. The rating is 72. It has the same maximum optimum altitude and ceiling as many of the aircraft here, the Dornier 335, the ME262, the P61 Black Widow, and the XP58 Chain Lightning. Nothing outclasses it. However, you need to keep an eye on this climb rate. At 408 feet per second, it's not terrible, but it lags behind most of the other aircraft, with the exception of the Chain Lightning. Power to weight ratios. Interesting figures here. Theoretically second best in class, and maybe this aircraft should accelerate well. Well, I don't think that I've felt that it accelerates well particularly, and that may be because drag is implemented in the game. I think that's fairly likely, but we have no idea of any figures for it, and I suspect that this is a fairly high drag aircraft, so I don't think you're going to notice excellent acceleration on the plane. These aircraft statistics dispose me to playing the aircraft mostly at altitude, hunting bombers and unwary opponents that may be in a low energy state, dealing significant damage at distance and coming in close with luck to finish them off. I try to keep the plane fast at all times, and I'm careful about descending, for instance, to attack ground attack planes, as the climb rate isn't great. I suppose what I'm describing is a plane that I play mostly as a horizontal boom and zoomer. Let's go through some options for setting this aircraft up. When you first acquire it, you will see that you have 5 equipment slots, 1 on the cockpit, 1 on the airframe, 2 on the engine, but 1 of those is locked until you specialise the aircraft, and 1 on the forward-firing weapons. There are also 5 consumable slots, but they're distributed rather differently. You have 1 on the cockpit, none on the airframe, 2 on the engine, 1 on the forward-firing weapons, and 1 on the turret, but that's locked until specialisation as well. Whilst you're flying this aircraft stock, I would recommend you do something like put a gun sight on it, polish skin to improve the cruise speed, high-speed gas turbine to improve the speed of the aircraft under boost, and then your favoured equipment for improving the guns. Mine would be gas-operated action. There is an argument for long gun barrels, which I'll talk about shortly, or indeed reinforced bolt carriers likewise. Now my aircraft is specialised, so let's pop it into that configuration and we'll see what I've done with it. The options for the cockpit slot are cockpit armour, G-suit, navigational radio equipment and a gun sight. I don't favour building the P.203 as a tank, therefore I reject the cockpit armour. I think your opportunities to use the aircraft stealthily are limited. You'll do most of your killing at medium range. You'll have been detected a long time before you start using those guns, therefore I don't like the idea of using navigational radio equipment. If you build the aircraft for speed, I think there's a pretty strong argument for using a G-suit. The G-suit gives you more manoeuvrability, that's more time on target, which could be the difference between killing it and having to fly away and take a second pass at it. You can't improve the accuracy as much as you can with a gun sight. There is a bonus characteristic which you can see there, the second one down. Accuracy when firing at moving targets is improved by 5%, and of course the guns are inherently accurate, so this could very well be a good choice if you go for a full speed build. I've been conventional and I've selected a gun sight, and this is ultimate level equipment and it's calibrated to 478, the furthest extent of calibration available. That means I get a 21% improvement in the accuracy of the guns, particularly useful for those 30mm firing at over 3,000 feet range. We get a 17% decrease in the pilot's ability to resist injuries, which is a pain. But as you can see in the bonus characteristics, the first one there is a 5% improvement in that same characteristic, so the total is a decrease of 12%. And I've gone for 5% accuracy when firing at moving targets and 3% accuracy of forward firing weaponry. Some of you may prefer to try and inflict critical damage or cause fires, which are the other bonus characteristics there. Turning to the airframe, the options here are reinforced skin, reinforced airframe, lightweight wing frame, and polished skin. And I think for me, 3 of these can be ruled out pretty quickly. I don't build the P.203 as a tank, therefore the first 2 are not for me. I don't like the adverse effects of the lightweight wing frame. Now, getting more manoeuvrability on the aircraft is not a bad thing per se, but the adverse effects on the aircraft HP and the wing's resistance to critical damage are not for me. So I opt for a polished skin. And this is ultimate level equipment and it's fully calibrated as well. And the advantages of this are 10% improvement in cruise speed. That's very welcome because this aircraft has a low cruise speed, which you should try and improve if you can. 10% acceleration when diving, probably not so useful, but still welcome to have. Adverse effects, you lose 3.8% yaw manoeuvrability and 3.8% manoeuvrability in turns. And in the case of the bonus characteristics, I've gone for 1% extra cruise speed, 1% extra manoeuvrability in turns, and 1% maximum speed with boost activated. Other characteristics, you could go for acceleration with 2 of the bonus characteristics. I've already said I don't feel like this aircraft accelerates particularly well, so I'm not looking to improve that. There is also an improvement in yaw manoeuvrability. This aircraft is a bit like a brick, so I'm not looking to do that either. On the engine slots, I have selected a combined injection boost system and a lightweight power unit. The other choices are engine armour protection or an uprated engine. Not building the BVP-203 as a tank means ruling out the engine armour protection. However, if you want a pure speed build, and that is a good build, you may want to use the uprated engine instead. And in the post-build effects, I'll show you the use of an uprated engine as opposed to this lightweight power unit. However, I have selected the high-speed gas turbine, a choice I would make under any circumstances for any build. It's ultimate level equipment and fully calibrated, and what we get here is 10% acceleration with boost activated. Not so interested in that, although it's nice to have. Much more interested in 5.8% maximum speed with boost activated. The adverse effect of this is a loss of 20% of boost. Now, the bonus characteristics, I've improved the engine cooldown rate by 10%. However, I've mitigated the loss of 20% boost availability by adding in 5% with the bonus characteristic, and then I've gone for another 1% boost speed. Other characteristics are engine cooldown rate, another 5%, maybe. 1% acceleration with boost activated. Well, I've already said that I'm not really interested in acceleration on this aircraft, or 0.5% maximum speed with boost activated. I like the blend of bonus characteristics I've got here. Lightweight power unit is again ultimate level equipment and it's fully calibrated again. This gives me 10% yaw manoeuvrability and 4.2% manoeuvrability in turns. Now the aircraft is a brick, but as I explained earlier when talking about the G-suit, a little bit more time on target could be the difference between destroying it and not destroying it, and that's the philosophy here. The adverse effect is that you lose 17% of your engine's resistance to critical damage. However, I've mitigated that with the first bonus characteristic here and reduced that to a 12% loss. 1% acceleration without boost, not too worried about that, and 1% improvement in cruise speed, which is nice because of that low cruise speed. Other characteristics, you could have 0.5% cruise speed, but I couldn't fit it in, so I might take the acceleration off, I guess. Another 1% acceleration with boost activated, not interested in that, and I'm not interested in the 2% yaw manoeuvrability either. We just quickly go through an uprated engine because, as I say, I think it's a valid choice and many of you will make it. We'll just pop one on. And this is also ultimate level equipment and fully calibrated. What you'd get there is the 10% acceleration without boost, 5.8% improvement in cruise speed, very welcome. Loss of 33% of your ability to resist fire, but you can mitigate it. As you can see, the first characteristic there takes 10% of that away, making it fully 23%. That will reduce your survivability figure to around 50. That's still fine, for instance, for using a first aid dressing package, and also for avoiding using pilot skill points on fire resistance or firefighting. And then I've improved the cruise speed with 2 bonus characteristics there for 1.5%, and those are the bonus characteristics I would use. Just for reference's sake, we've got maximum speed with boost activated at 0.5%, 1% acceleration without boost, and 5% engine cooldown rate there. On the forward firing weapons, you have 3 choices: reinforced bolt carriers, long gun barrels, or gas operated action. You've got a burst length of 8 seconds on all the guns. For me, that's plenty, therefore I don't tend to favour the reinforced bolt carriers. Long gun barrels. This is an interesting choice. I don't think there's a great deal of virtue improving the range of the 30mm. However, improving the range of the 15mm cannons to something like 2600 feet, a lot of you are going to like that idea, and of course the big advantage of long gun barrels is they do not affect the accuracy of the weaponry. So if you want the accuracy to be maintained at its highest possible level, long gun barrels may very well be a good choice for you. However, I favour the gas operated action to increase the DPS of the guns, which is pretty low. And this is an ultimate level piece of equipment, fully calibrated, so I get 15.2% rate of fire improvement in the guns, and that is equivalent to improving the DPS by 15.2%. The penalty is 14.2% decrease in accuracy. I've mitigated that with the second bonus characteristic here and reduced that to 9.2% by improving the accuracy of the guns. I've also improved the cooldown rate of the guns by 10% to get them back quicker, and then I've gone for another 2.5% improvement in rate of fire, again raw DPS increase. The other characteristics that are available there are 2, which affect the chance of causing a fire, totaling 15%. Some of you may be interested in criticals and fire, so you might be attracted to those. You could have another 5% cooldown of the guns as well. On consumables, on the cockpit slot, you've got 2 main choices: the first aid dressing package or the fire extinguisher. If you've got any of these, sell them for credits, and one of these days I will. Even if you mount an uprated engine, and I haven't, I think there's still margin, plenty of margin, to mount the first aid dressing package and heal your pilot if he gets injured, which of course means he can't fire his guns accurately. Can't do anything with the airframe. On the engine slots, I've mounted engine cooling, which is a standard choice for all fighters of every description. This gives you 10 seconds of extra boost on top of whatever you've got, provided you've got some. It won't have any effect if you try and use this if you've got no boost available. On the second slot, don't find the engines get knocked out that often that I feel the need to use a manual engine restart, whereas I do with something like the P61, for instance. So I've gone for the improved mixture control, which increases the engine thrust by 5% and cruise speed, and this is particularly what I'm interested in, by 2%. On the ammunition, both of them, I dropped the standard and fit universal. If you use gold, you already know which one of these you're going to choose. The turret, your choices are much more limited. I use the universal. You can use gold if that's what you wish to do. Thinking about crew skills, the P.203 is a premium aircraft and therefore an excellent crew trainer. You can train your German heavy fighter pilots in it, and also your gunners from your ground attack aircraft and your bombers. When it comes to standard pilots, you're probably thinking of your German heavy fighters. You'll be looking to put skills like aerodynamic expert, engine guru skills, marksman skills, possibly battle tested. This ME262 pilot is the kind of pilot that you might be seeking to put extra training on, and I'd start with aerodynamics expert, then get engine guru 1, then marksman 1, possibly battle tested next, then drop it in favour of engine guru 2, and then possibly drop it and work to marksman 2 and come back to battle tested. Alternatively, you might like to not bother with marksman 2. That's a bit of an interesting decision when you're thinking about ME262s. I prefer to have marksman 2, but some of you don't. If you don't put that on, then you might be able to squeeze in something like battle tested and cruise flight, or slightly awkwardly, you might choose resilience. But these are the basic set here: the battle tested, the engine gurus, marksman skills, and aerodynamics expert. Of course, there are special pilots in the game. Here is Charlotte von Stauben, and I like to use Charlotte in my BVP-203, particularly because of this special skill. And it's the latter part of the paragraph that's come up here that interests me. The use of Charlotte von Stauben increases the damage caused in a head-on attack by 20%. That's formidable. On the other hand, if you're pursuing a speed build, then maybe the special pilot Albrecht Schneider would interest you. One of his special skills, unfortunately, is disabled, that for the ME410 Master. However, the other skill, Boost Expert, increases the maximum speed with boost activated by 3% and increases the engine cooldown rate by 10%. Highly recommended if you're going for that speed build. When it comes to your gunner, that will come from either a German ground attacker or bomber. In this case, I've put in my tier 10 German ground attacker gunner from the MEP1102B, in other words. And in order of priority, I look for defensive fire to reduce the amount of damage you take by 30%, then precision gunner to inflict criticals. Criticals will deter bots and probably some humans as well. I'd prefer to get quick reflexes so that the turrets aim faster, but unfortunately you have to work through this relatively useless skill, in my opinion, armourer, which increases the burst length of guns that hardly ever seem to stop firing anyway by 50%, but it takes you up to this very useful skill of ballistics expert, which increases the range of fire by 10%. And then I'd work through probably endurance for the P.203 to get to quick reflexes. I've never found much use for this 4-point skill, which concentrates fire on an enemy aircraft with the fewest hit points, because generally you're only pursued by one. Now I'm going to look at the effects of my choices on the base characteristics of the aircraft. Those are shown in columns C and D. You've seen these before in the aircraft statistics section. The effects of my choices are shown in columns E and F. The difference between the two in absolute terms is in column G, and in percentage terms in column H. We look at the guns, we can see immediately we've improved the rating of them by 7 points, over 17%. The DPS has gone up to 647, which is nearly an 18% increase, and we can see the effects on the individual gun groups here, here, and here. We've also got some other effects in the cases of the auto-aim angles on all of the guns. We've improved it by 5% to 2.1. That may not seem much, but it will make a difference. We've also improved the accuracy of the guns. In the case of the 13mm machine guns, it's now down to 0.33 of a degree, which is excellent. Similarly, on the 15mm auto cannons, also 0.33 of a degree, and we've turned the 30mm cannons into true sniper guns by getting the dispersion angle down to 0.16. We've improved the range on the defensive armament from 2,300 feet to over 2,500 feet, as you can see. On the survivability, broadly no changes. From somewhere we've gained an extra point of damage resistance. Airspeed, quite a considerable change, gone up by 10 rating points. That's over 14% increase. We've got the cruise speed up to 410. That's a 68 mile an hour increase. Very handy because that cruise speed is a bit low. We've got the boost speed up by 59 miles an hour to 587. The penalty for these improvements is a loss of 6 seconds of boost, unfortunately. On the maneuverability, we have got some improvements. 2 of them. The turn time has come down by just under half a second, and we've also got the yaw maneuverability up by 10.2%, and this will allow you to stay on target just a bit longer. Other than that, there are no other changes. The altitude performance, the rating's gone up by a couple of points, and that's because we've got the climb rate up to a useful 510 feet per second, whereas before it was a fairly indifferent 408 feet per second. Other effects, which are not listed in numbers in the UI. On the turrets, we've got a 60% increase in the chance of criticals. That's important. That will deter bots and probably some humans as well. We've also got a 50% improved burst length for the turrets. You probably won't notice that, in my opinion. On the forward firing guns, we've got an improvement of 10% on the cooldown rate, 10% extra chance of fire, and a 10% extra chance of causing criticals. On survivability, when the aircraft is damaged, we've got an improvement of 25% in controllability coming from the battle-tested skill. The gunner will resist injury by an extra 20%, and even the pilot will resist it by an extra 3%, which is welcome. However, we've lost 12% of the ability of the engines to resist damage. On airspeed, we have a 22% improvement in acceleration with boost, nearly 10%, 9.4. Without boost, 10% improvement acceleration in dive, and the engines will cool down 10% faster. As far as the pilot is concerned, we were using Charlotte von Stauven here with her 2 special skills, one of which I'm not that interested in, Dazzling Star. That's to do with stealth and detectability. Aerodynamics expert, battle tested, Engine Guru 1, Marksman 1, and then a skill that is important because it improves the head-on damage by 20%, Celestial Fury. On the gunner, we have Endurance, Armourer, Ballistics Expert, Defensive Fire, and Precision Gunner. For those of you interested in speed, I have dropped the lightweight power unit and substituted in an ultimate level fully calibrated uprated engine, and the effects of this are shown in columns I and J. The difference between that and the base build is shown in absolute terms in column K and in percentage terms in column L. There's no effect on the gun, so we can go straight to the survivability. The use of an uprated engine adversely affects fire resistance. We've lost 15 points here, 23%. If you don't use the bonus characteristic to mitigate this, it'll be 33%. Don't do that. Airspeed, the rating has now gone up to 85, an improvement of 16 points, 23% and more. We've got cruise speed up to 455 miles an hour. That's an incredible 113 miles an hour improvement. This aircraft is now swift. And the boost speed up to 599 miles an hour. I very much doubt if it had ever been able to achieve that in real life, but that's 71 miles an hour improvement. We've still lost 6 seconds of boost, unfortunately. Maneuverability you would expect to go down, and in fact it's now slightly worse than the base build. That's because the turn time has gone up by just over 0.4 of a second, and also the yaw maneuverability has been reduced by 3.8%. More good news though, altitude performance has gone up to 75, 3-point improvement, and that's because we've got the climb rate now up to 518 feet per second. Other effects, the gun's unchanged, so we'll skip over that. Survivability, pretty much the same, except for this characteristic here. The engine resistance has now improved because we're not using that lightweight power unit. Acceleration, 24% acceleration with boost still, but now 24% without boost, 10% acceleration in divers we had before, and also that engine cooldown rate. I've already talked about the maneuverability. Now the pilot here is just a standard pilot. It's actually from that ME262 that I showed you before, with aerodynamics expert, battle tested, engine guru 1 and 2, and marksman 1. And of course, if you use Albrecht Schneider, you'll get even more improvement in speed. So do think about that. Same gunner as before, with endurance, armourer, ballistics expert, defensive fire, and precision gunner. Here's a performance evaluation of the BVP-203 across 25 battles. These battles were fought at different times of the day and different parts of the week, morning, afternoon and evening, week and weekend, to try and get a representative sample. The other thing to note is that I was flying solo in all of these battles. I don't include flights in a performance evaluation. First thing to note is that the win rate was 76%, and I average across all aircraft 65%, so that feels quite significant. If we just step across to personal points quickly in column F, we can see that the average was 13,342. Across all aircraft, I averaged 10,400. This is statistically significant. It is not likely to be the product of chance. And what that means is that when I fly this plane, given the way that I've built it, I am a more powerful opponent, not just because of my skills, but because of this aircraft's characteristics. Looking at some of the other details, the average margin of result, we tended to win by 253 points, which is a lot. The battle tier, interestingly, I was top tier 64% of the time. That's tier 8. That's probably because people prefer to fly premiums at tier 8 than they do tech tree aircraft at tier 9, so that may be representative. Chevrons, I averaged 3.7, maximum was 5. That's a hero of the sky. Now I achieved that 7 times in 25 battles, which is pretty high. Never achieved less than 2. Personal points, the maximum was just under 20,000 here. More interestingly, I think, is that we've only just crept below the 10,000 mark for personal points across those battles. Never finished lower than second in the 25 battles, averaged 1.2. Kills, and this is a class-specific mission for a heavy, therefore it is marked in that turquoise colour at the top. Very nearly 12 on average, maximum was 18 and the minimum was 8. Aerial target damage, average 9,000, the maximum was 14,000, minimum was 4,833. We can ignore ground targets, although I will say in this battle here, where I destroyed one ground target, that did flip a sector. So it happens occasionally, but not very often, as you can see. Another class-specific mission here, capture points, average 314 with a maximum of 516, minimum of 140. The other class-specific mission is bomber and ground attack aircraft kills, averaged 5, maximum was 11. That will include bombers from bomber flights, incidentally, and the minimum was 1, an outlier game there. I died on average just over once a game, 1.2 as you can see, the maximum was 3. And I kept an eye on opposing P61s in the enemy teams as well, and you can see that there were far more battles without P61s, either in my team or the enemy team for that matter. Averaged 0.3. So basically the P61, that year of the P61 is a real effect. They've nearly disappeared from the skies. Overall, this is a strong set of figures, and it means that when I fly this aircraft, I'm a more powerful opponent, partly because of the aircraft. And if you know how to fly at tier 8, then probably in this aircraft you will be a more powerful opponent as well. The map for the forthcoming battle is Northern Bridgehead. It's the Atonement variant, 5 sectors laid out in fairly much the 5 spots of a die configuration. And we have in the centre a repair airbase, therefore strategically and tactically important. Strategically, because you can spawn there, you can get a different aircraft of the same tier if you're destroyed, or you can get full repairs. And of course it gives you easy access to all the other sectors. On one axis about the airbase, we have a pair of command centres, one near each spawn, and these release bomber flights to try and flip enemy sectors to your team. And then the make-weight sectors in this battle on the other axis are a pair of garrisons. And the way to win this battle is largely to make sure you hold your command centre, see if you can hold the airbase at least for longer than the enemy, and if you can possibly hold the enemy command centre as well, that will bring you victory. If we look at the order of battle, we can see that I'm top tier in my P.203. I have a specialised Sea Fang at tier 8 with me, and then we have 3 tier 7s, a specialised ME265, a Grand Attacker, a fighter, a BF-109G, and another fighter, a P-51D. The enemy has an extra tier 8, so they have a multi-role fighter, which is a fighter by any other name, the BVP-210, a heavy P-1056, big guns, not very manoeuvrable, bit slow, but they also have a specialised LA-9. And then their tier 7s are an F4U4 Corsair and an IL-10 specialised ground attacker. And I look at this and I think I had better be the difference in this battle, because otherwise it looks fairly evenly balanced. So let's see what happened. I gave consideration at the start of this battle to going straight to the enemy command centre to try and prevent them from taking it. Instead, I've decided to try and secure the airfield and use that as a basis for attacking the enemy command centre, or indeed our own if it gets taken by the enemy. So we're now looking for the heavies over the airbase in the centre. You can see them, sizing them up. Select one of them, begins to turn across me. Get the lead right and immediately hit the engine. Those J4Ms are quite hard to hit. I swing round and I see a lot of red, see an LA-9, human players coming towards me. Line him up. And I have to say he gets a bit lucky here. It doesn't take an awful lot of damage from what were reasonably well aimed shots. So I fly on rather than fly back into the massive enemy aircraft. In the meantime, the enemy have managed to take their command centre. That tells me that I've probably got bombers and ground attackers I can shoot here. I spot the first bomber and up I go for it. Doesn't take long to whittle it down once I get the weapons on target. I know the other bomber is nearby, so I swing round for that. And even though it's a bot, it's a dangerous RB-17, so I'll be pleased to get rid of it. Keeping an eye on the big arrow at the bottom of the circle around me. Something trying to shoot me. Doesn't appear to be hitting me. I look round behind. I can't even shoot it with the rear guns. It's too far away. Now we're going back to the centre. Spot a heavy. P-93. Put some good shots into that. Now that's reasonably mobile, more mobile than I am. It's not the most mobile of Japanese heavies, but still better than me, so I fly away from it, intending to go for a second pass on it. Gets destroyed as I get 4,000 feet away. And now I see a BVP, that's a human player I believe. I anticipate how he's going to turn, because he's fighting a fighter and trying to also shoot down one of the J4Ms, and I managed to hit him. Those are awkward to hit as well, small hit boxes. Now heavy was flying across me, so I turned back, double backed in order to try and hit it, and in fact I'll end up on a bomber. And the long range weaponry disposes of that, and at this point I get my engine shot out. But I've got enough speed to be able to put distance between myself and the Typhoon that I think did it. And now I turn around to try and shoot it down. And that proves to be an easy task, and in quick order I also shoot down the LA-9 that I failed to shoot at the start of the game. Give consideration to going for the bomber flight here, but I decide we need to try and defend the airbase, so I am going to turn around and try and shoot down more enemy aircraft. And it's nip and tuck here for a little while. That aircraft blows up before I can shoot it. J4M, which is a tricky aircraft to shoot, which is why I like to take them out. I managed to get rid of that. The enemy, however, has managed to make inroads to the base all the same. The P.203 comes into view. Can't quite get a shot on that. Shoot it with the rear gun. Decide to fly away. Was going to go for the bomber flight, but unfortunately their target has disappeared, so they are no longer available. And at that point I spot one of the enemy bombers going for our command centre. And since we are 3-2 down, my policy here is to clear out the threats of the command centre and then see if I can get on the attack. To adjust the aim a couple of times in order to get the Junkers 288A, but down it goes. There's a bomber above me and a ground attacker below me. I don't like to trade altitude when there are bombers around. I like to take those out first and then I'll go for the ground attackers. Where I might not do that is if I know that I've got a bot bomber and a human ground attacker below me. Then I might prioritise the ground attacker. I'm able to take out the RB-17. Ground attacker has been disposed of by members of my team. Unfortunately, I've lost both engines. It is now time to get on the attack, but I'm somewhat hampered until I get my engines back. Keep an eye on the P.203, and then I notice that the Junkers 288 has already spawned from the airfield that the enemy own. This is one of the problems of not getting on the attack quickly enough, so I have to turn and shoot that down again. And down it goes. Now we've got both engines back. It's time to set about trying to capture sectors. The enemy has had 3 for a long time. That's a lot of red, and it's not ideal to fly heavy through a lot of red. You have to try and be careful and pick a good route through. Basically, you mustn't turn, shoot something and go straight through and hope that nothing can get on you. And unfortunately, I don't damage it. Now, I haven't got any boost, so I just need to go, not make the mistake of turning, and perhaps turn my attention to the next sector that's available, which is the command centre. I could see the heavy up above me, which is why I started to climb. It flies obligingly across me. It is a human player, so I think it's worth taking out. Long-range weaponry. Crumps it hard initially, then I take a little while to get the next shot in, but eventually I destroy it. Now here's a P.94. This is a bot. Now I do hit it several times, but not as heavily as I thought I might, so I fly away from that. Quickly put distance between me. I use here 4,000 feet as a rule of thumb to turn, especially as that is in a low energy state. Moving very slowly. Now come back and finish it off. Now we need to try and get this sector as quickly as possible. My team need to oblige me as well. It's not just this sector we need at least one more to pull us back. In very short order I destroyed 2 enemy ADAs. We're on the verge of taking this. There is one more that I could shoot, but I've got to get some distance before I turn on it. Do that. He's still alive. And now I begin shooting him, and with that I capture the sector. Now I turn my attention to the middle again, which we have finally begun to make serious inroads into. Hero of the Sky has already gone through. And at that point I spot an RB-17. The scoreline will be in 3 seconds at this point. Well worth killing the enemy bomber. And fortunately for me, considering I'm out of boost, it banks across me. And in the meantime my team capture the other 2 sectors and get superiority. So what was a hard-fought game has now significantly swung towards my team. We're quickly racking up the points from superiority and looking around for final targets. Decide to try and chase down this P.94. And something shoots my engine out. From nowhere. Was it a sniper? Was it bird strike? Just something that happens in the game. And unfortunately that hampers me. I can't get near enough to the P.94 to land any shots. and the game finishes. 5 chevron battle, a lot of medals, 18,000 personal points. Let's review the outcome of this battle quickly, and we can see from the centre that it's a 5 chevron battle or a grade 1 heavy fighter. Grossing 352,326 credits or silver if you prefer, premium account bonus adding over 117,000 of that. In the message box we can see there were no expenses, the aircraft wasn't shot down, so no repair costs, and I was using prepaid consumables, that is, consumables I bought in advance, half price in a sale. Aircraft experience of 5,864, the base there is 3,450, premium account bonus 1,725, nearly 700 coming from other sources. 293 free experience, 206 is the base, 86 coming from premium account bonus. We have a token, that's for the first medal of the day, that's the Maguire medal just there, but there's also a Winged Legend and a Hero of the Sky achievement. On the personal score tab we can see that 2 of the class specific missions are complete. That for attack aircraft and bombers, destruction thereof, is shown as 4/5 complete, but actually it was 7 out of 8. One more and we'd have had the full house. Plenty enough for 5 chevrons. Personal points 18,100. Only 1 sector captured despite feeling very busy in that battle. 16 aerial targets destroyed. 11,475 damage, which shows that I was shooting at high hit point pool aircraft such as bombers. 36 critical hits coming off the cannons, didn't lose the aircraft, 460 personal capture points, that was split 280 for defending, 180 for attacking. And we look on the team score tab, we can see that 18,100 personal points and 5 chevrons was enough to be first on my team. It would have been the case on the enemy team as well. And in fact, the other players on both teams cancelled each other out, and I'm lucky that my team pulled it out at the end. I really feel I should have done quite a bit better in this circumstance, but still, it's a good win. That brings me to the end of my reassessment of the P.203, the strengths of which had been masked in what you might call the year of the P61. Now that latter plane has been nerfed and is no longer a popular choice, those strengths are evident once again. This is a powerful plane. Well, I hope you found that interesting, and that if you did, you'll come and see my future content. But until then, this is the Noble Q, signing out.